The land of Israel was parched and barren. For 3 long years no rain had fallen, and the once fertile fields lay cracked and lifeless under the scorching sun. Rivers dwindled to trickles, and wells ran dry. The people, their lips parched and their spirits broken, whispered among themselves, "Was this the judgment of the Lord?" The drought had come upon Israel because of their king Ahab and his queen Jezebel. Ahab, though an Israelite, had turned his back on the Lord and led the nation into idolatry. Under Jezebel's influence, the worship of Baal, a foreign god of storms and fertility, had become the law of the land. Altars to Baal rose high on the hills, and Jezebel hunted down the prophets of the Lord, determined to silence his voice forever. But one prophet remained, a man of unshakable faith and fiery zeal. The word of the Lord came to Elijah as he hid in the wilderness. "Go, show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth." Obeying the Lord's command, Elijah made his way to Samaria, where the king resided. When Ahab saw Elijah, his eyes burned with anger. "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" he demanded. Elijah stood firm, his voice steady and resolute. "I have not troubled Israel," he replied, "but you and your father's house have, because you have abandoned the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals. Now summon the people of Israel to Mount Carmel and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. There we will see whose God is the true God." Ahab, intrigued by Elijah's challenge, agreed. Messengers were sent across the land, and soon a great assembly gathered on the slopes of Mount Carmel. The third contest on Mount Carmel. The crowd murmured as they watched Elijah, a lone figure standing against the multitude of Baal's prophets. His voice rang out, commanding attention. "How long will you waver between 2 opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal, then follow him." The people were silent, unsure of whom to trust. Elijah stepped forward, his eyes blazing with conviction. "Here is the challenge. Let us take 2 bulls. The prophets of Baal will prepare 1 bull and lay it on their altar, but they will not set fire to it. I will do the same with the other bull, laying it on the altar of the Lord. Then you will call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord, the God who answers by fire. He is God." The people agreed, their curiosity piqued. 4th Baal's prophets call in vain. The prophets of Baal prepared their altar, placing the bull upon it. From morning till noon they cried out, "O Baal, answer us." They danced around the altar, their voices rising in desperate pleas. But there was no answer. At noon, Elijah began to mock them. "Cry louder. Perhaps he is deep in thought or busy or traveling. Maybe he is asleep and must be awakened." The prophets, stung by his taunts, shouted even louder. They slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Yet as the sun began to dip low in the sky, there was still no voice, no answer, no fire. As the day waned, Elijah called the people to him. He repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down, using 12 stones to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. He dug a trench around the altar and arranged the wood and the bull upon it. Then, to the astonishment of the crowd, he instructed them to pour water over the offering and the wood, not once but 3 times, until the trench was filled with water. Elijah stepped forward and lifted his hands toward heaven. "O Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel," he prayed, "let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, so that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back to you." At that moment, fire fell from heaven, a blinding column of divine power. It consumed the offering, the wood, the stones, and even the water in the trench. The people fell on their faces, crying out, The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God. Elijah turned to the crowd, his voice ringing with authority. Seize the prophets of Baal. Let none of them escape. The people obeyed, and the false prophets were brought to the Kishon Valley and put to death. With the prophets of Baal defeated, Elijah climbed to the summit of Mount Carmel and knelt to pray. 7 times he sent his servant to look toward the sea, and on the 7th time, the servant returned with good news. Behold, a cloud small as a man's hand is rising from the sea. Elijah stood and said to Ahab, "Go, prepare your chariot, and go down before the rain stops you." Even as he spoke, the sky grew black with clouds, and a mighty rainstorm swept across the land. The drought was over, and the power of God had been revealed. This story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal reminds us that God alone is worthy of our worship. He answers the prayers of the faithful and reveals His power in ways that no other can. Through Elijah's courage and unwavering faith, the people of Israel were drawn back to their Creator, and the land was restored.